Hey Niners fans, we have some major news to unpack today, and honestly, it is one of those moments where you have to step back and appreciate what Christian McCaffrey has done this season. The league just confirmed something huge, and it's not just another routine announcement. This is the kind of recognition that forces you to admit that the man has had a historic year, and is not up for debate. I want to hear what you think about him being named a finalist for MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, and Comeback Player of the Year all in the same season. That alone is mind-blowing, and it shows how rare this level of dominance truly is. If you remember the skepticism that surrounded McCaffrey coming into this year, it makes this achievement even more impressive. People were asking if he still had it, if he had lost a step, if he could return to the kind of player he once was. There were doubts from all sides, and some voices were even louder than others, claiming he might never reach that level again. But the guy shut all of that down in the most emphatic way possible. He put together a season that was not just good, but almost unprecedented, and the numbers he put up are the kind of stats you only see once in a generation. He did things this season that made you stop and realize you were watching something special. When you look at the records he broke and the impact he had on every single game, it becomes clear that he didn't just return a form. He elevated the entire offense. It is one thing to be productive, but McCaffrey has been a force in every phase of the game, and that kind of versatility is what makes him so valuable. It is hard not to respect a player who answers critics with performance rather than words, and that is exactly what he did this season. Now, the big question is what this means for the Niners moving forward. Because yes, McCaffrey's season was incredible, but the team still has a lot of work to do. Even after a 13-win campaign, this roster is not close to being finished. There are still holes that need to be addressed, and some of the problems that showed up this year could become even bigger issues if they are not solved. The coaching has been phenomenal, and the culture in that locker room is one of the strongest in the league, but you can't ignore the fact that this team relied on a lot of grit and resilience to get through a brutal schedule. This season, the 49ers faced some of the toughest stretches you can imagine. They played a series of high-pressure games back-to-back, and several of those were on short weeks. The way they responded showed the kind of toughness that only comes from a team that believes in itself. Rookies and young players got thrown into the fire, and they didn't just survive, they grew. Those games against the Bears, the Seahawks, and the Eagles weren't just wins, they were lessons. And the way the team responded after injuries piled up showed a level of depth and leadership that is rare. But the truth is, the injuries were a massive factor. The team had to push players beyond what was expected, and they still managed to keep winning. That kind of season takes a toll, and you can see it in the way the offense struggled at times, especially when it had to deal with constant changes along the offensive line and limited receiving options. The fact that they still ended up with 13 wins is a testament to the coaching staff, the players, and the overall mentality of the team. They did it in the toughest division in football, and that is not a small detail. And now we come to the quarterback situation, which is where the conversation gets even more interesting. Brock Purdy has proven that he is the guy for this team, and the recent comments from analysts and former players only reinforce that. There are always critics, and there will always be people trying to argue that you can find a better option. But the reality is that Purdy has shown he is the best quarterback the 49ers can realistically get right now. He has been the anchor of the offense, and he has delivered in the biggest moments. When you look at the way he played in the playoffs, especially against Seattle, you can't deny that he is the leader this team needs. What makes this even more significant is the contrast with other teams that spent massive money on quarterbacks and still came up short. It is easy to criticize the 49ers for not chasing the next big name, but when you look at the stability and the results, it becomes clear that they made the right choice. Purdy is not just a competent quarterback. He is a quarterback who has proven he can win at the highest level. That kind of confirmation is rare, and it is something the organization should be proud of. Now, the backup quarterback situation is where things get complicated. Mac Jones stepped in when Purdy was injured and did a great job, boosting his trade value and reminding everyone that he is a capable player. The question is whether the 49ers should consider trading him if they can get a second-round pick. On one hand, you want to keep a strong backup, especially when your starter has a history of injuries. On the other hand, you can't ignore the fact that the team has needs that could be addressed with that kind of draft capital. The reality is that Mac Jones is unlikely to see significant playing time as long as Purdy is healthy. And if you have the chance to turn him into a second-round pick, that could be a huge opportunity to strengthen the roster. The 49ers have several positions that need reinforcement, and they cannot afford to keep relying on the same aging core without injecting youth and speed. The offensive line needs depth, the receiving core needs more weapons, and the team needs to start preparing for the future of key positions like left tackle and tight end. The age of the offense is a real concern. When you look at the snap-weighted age, the 49ers have one of the oldest defensive units in the league, and that is not sustainable if you want to maintain long-term success. The league is moving faster every year, and the physical toll on veteran players is undeniable. You can succeed with an older roster, but it is risky, and it requires constant reinforcements through the draft. The team has to start hitting on those picks, because continuity only matters if you can keep the players healthy and productive. One of the biggest issues this season was the lack of rookie contribution on offense. The defense saw a lot of rookie snaps, and that was a positive sign, but the offense did not get the same level of help. Injuries to key young players limited their impact, and that meant the team had to rely even more on veterans. That is not a sustainable model, especially when you consider the needs at wide receiver and the possibility that Christian McCaffrey cannot carry the entire offense forever. The 49ers are still a serious threat next year, but they have to get a lot right. They need to add speed, they need to strengthen the trenches, and they need to start planning for the future of key veterans. If they do that, they will be a nightmare to face. But if they ignore these issues, they could be in trouble. The next offseason will be one of the most important in recent history for the franchise, and the decisions they make now will define whether this team can stay at the top. Now, as we keep digging into the offseason picture, the conversation around the 49ers becomes more intense because the team is not just dealing with one or two issues. They're dealing with a roster that has been through a war, and the clock is ticking on several key pieces. You can feel the urgency in the way the organization approaches the offseason, because they know that the window to win a championship is real, but it is also limited. The challenge is to stay competitive while also building for the future, and that balance is never easy, especially in a division as tough as the NFC West. One of the biggest questions is how the 49ers will handle the wide receiver position. This has been a recurring theme for years, and it is still not fully resolved. The team has relied on a few core players, but injuries and inconsistency have shown that they need more depth and speed. The receiving core needs a true number one target who can stretch the field and take pressure off the defense. There have been rumors and speculation about potential trades and targets, but the reality is that the team needs to be aggressive if they want to stay ahead of the competition. The pass game is evolving in the NFL, and you cannot rely on short passes and checkdowns to win consistently, especially when the defense knows what you're going to do. When you watch the games, you can see how much the offense misses a true vertical threat. The defense can cheat up and take away the short routes because they do not fear the deep ball. That puts more pressure on the running game and the tight ends, and it forces the offense into predictable patterns. That is not a sustainable way to operate, and it is one of the reasons why the team struggled at times this season. The 49ers have to find a way to create more explosive plays, and the easiest way to do that is to add a receiver who can win one-on-one matchups down the field. If the team can land a player like that, it would completely change the offense. Suddenly, the defense would have to respect the deep threat, and that opens up everything else. It would make play action more effective, it would make the running game even stronger, and it would give Purdy more options in the passing game. The key is finding someone who is not just talented, but also durable and consistent. The 49ers have had their fair share of injuries at receiver, and they cannot afford to keep relying on players who cannot stay on the field. Another major area of concern is the offensive line. The 49ers have one of the best tackles in the league in Trent Williams, but the reality is that he is aging, and you cannot expect him to play at this level forever. The team needs to start preparing for the future by developing a younger player who can step in when the time comes. That means drafting or acquiring a tackle who can eventually take over, and it also means building depth at guard. The offensive line has been a strength for years, but this season exposed some vulnerabilities, especially when injuries piled up. If the team wants to keep their running game elite, they have to protect the quarterback and maintain that level of dominance up front. The tight end position is also a big question mark. George Kittle is one of the best players in the league, but he has had his share of injuries and the wear and tear is real. The kind of player he is, the way he plays, it takes a physical toll on his body. He is a warrior, and he gives everything every snap, but that means he will not be able to play at that same intensity forever. The team needs to start thinking about the future at tight end, and they need to find a way to keep Kittle effective without burning him out. That can mean finding another tight end who can share the load, or adding more weapons so that the offense is not so dependent on him. Then, there is the question of Christian McCaffrey's long-term future. We have seen players who put up massive workloads one season and then struggle to stay healthy the next. McCaffrey has been incredibly durable in the past, but the reality is that he is carrying a heavy load. The team has to be smart about how they manage him, and they need to have a plan for what happens if he misses time. That means having a backup plan, and it means finding a way to keep the offense balanced, even if he is not available. The 49ers cannot afford to have their entire identity tied to one player, no matter how great he is. That brings us back to the draft and the need for the team to start getting more production from their rookies. The defense has done a great job of integrating young players, but the offense has not seen the same level of contribution. Injuries have played a role, but there is also a concern that the team is not developing enough young talent on offense. If the 49ers want to maintain their level of success, they need to start hitting on those draft picks and getting players who can step in and contribute immediately. That is the only way to keep the team fresh and competitive over the long term. It is also worth noting that the 49ers have been extremely smart in the way they manage their roster. They have built a culture of accountability and toughness, and that has been a key reason why they have stayed competitive year after year. But culture alone is not enough. You can have the best locker room in the league, but if you do not have the right pieces on the field, you will not win a championship. The team needs to continue investing in talent, and they need to be willing to make bold moves if necessary. One of the biggest strengths of the 49ers is their coaching staff. Kyle Shanahan has proven time and time again that he can get the most out of his players, and he has shown an ability to adapt and adjust when things are not going well. He has taken quarterbacks who were not considered elite and turned them into winners. He has built a system that is tough to defend, and he has created a culture of discipline and execution. But even the best coaches need the right pieces, and that is why the offseason is so important. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to 49ers Zone and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the San Francisco 49ers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. Whispers are growing louder around the league, and at the center of the noise is a bold, almost unthinkable idea. The San Francisco 49ers potentially moving on from Kyle Shanahan to pursue the ultimate symbol of football authority, Bill Belichick. What began as idle chatter has rapidly evolved into full-blown speculation, fueled by the belief that ownership could be tempted by the promise of instant gravitas and championship pedigree. Shanahan remains widely respected for his offensive creativity and system-driven success, but the NFL is rarely patient when expectations are sky-high. In certain corners of the football world, there is a sense that good may no longer be enough for a franchise that sees itself as one final step away from immortality. That perception alone has been enough to spark rumors of a dramatic pivot at the top. Enter Belichick. The mere mention of his name changes the temperature of any conversation. League insiders quietly wonder what it would look like to pair a historically disciplined, defense-first mastermind with one of the most talented and versatile rosters in football. Supporters of the idea argue that Belichick's presence would instantly command the locker room, eliminate ambiguity in decision-making, and signal an all-in push for titles, not just contention. Skeptics, however, raise questions just as quickly. Would the famously rigid coach adapt to a roster built on speed, creativity, and modern offensive principles? Could the front office coexist with a figure accustomed to total control? And perhaps most intriguingly, would parting ways with Shanahan risk disrupting an identity that has been carefully constructed over multiple seasons? For now, there is no confirmation, only smoke. But in the NFL, smoke often means someone is at least thinking about fire. The idea of the Belichick effect descending on Santa Clara may sound far-fetched, yet the buzz refuses to fade. Until clarity emerges, the league watches closely, aware that if this rumor ever becomes reality, it could reshape the balance of power in ways few saw coming. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the San Francisco 49ers, make sure to subscribe to 49ers Zone and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.